Thank you, Chair, and thanks to me being an organizer for coming back again. We can finish at 3:30. I'm taking the full advantage of being inconvenient over here. Um, After yesterday's inaugural session, I did mention yesterday, but I had to keep it absolutely tight-lipped, saying that when we meet tomorrow, that is today, we're going to discuss a lot of issues, debate a lot. There was point made yesterday that why didn't we use AI to predict divorce, right? There was a mention that yesterday. We did expect Doklam to happen or Galvan to happen after 1962, immediately on the second day. We didn't need any AI for that. So we were absolutely vigilant about China's activities traditionally on the borders, beyond borders. The new challenges which we face today, uh, when the second largest economy is not only the second largest economy as such, but is also the biggest problem and challenge for China. India's rise, India's technological rise, economic rise, India's proposition for alternative world. You take anything, and China comes up with its own game plan, and we have been outsmarted because I think we are not capable of understanding, or maybe we were not capable of understanding. So entire idea of having this India Forum in China was actually to accentuate bringing professionals on a forum where we discuss about all these challenges and help our policymakers and then build up consensus, not consensus essentially, but build a direction and momentum to take it forward. And today I'm going to speak about the green technology innovation and China's new development concept. Yesterday it was mentioned that science is only important when it is applied, right? When it turns into technology. But technology doesn't have its own metabolism. A technology moves to certain direction because that metabolism has been provided by a narrative. So something which is beyond narrative, beyond technology is narrative. When we look at China, this narrative is very important and is at the core of understanding China's technological revolution, development, direction, and you name it. This narrative, understanding this narrative is very essential for everyone who is studying China. We are teachers, but we are essentially also the researchers. Most of us, the panelists who are speaking today, we are first researchers of China, and that is why we are just putting out our key findings. More than narrative, what is important is also the timings or what you call opportunity. You have science and technology, but you don't develop it. You have science, but you do not develop into technology. And if you do not have a narrative, and if you have a narrative, but you do not have an opportunity, you are not successful. So what is most important that you have to develop your narrative, which will make your technology deployable in that certain period of time. So this is an absolutely very fine-tuned game. And this is a game we have to play in a very in a focused way. And as a result of it, there are no margin for errors. Okay, putting that in perspective, what is most important to understand is that green technology, is it really green, or it is a green technology which is red, right? So now, if you understand and revisit my title, China's narrative of developing technology from last 15 years has a lot of strategical implications and contours. Why so? The two things essentially happened in last 15 years. You may say that, okay, there are a lot of political things that might happen, strategic things that might happen, but essentially two things. One, a country which was heavily industrialized, dependent on export-led growth, suddenly switches to green technology. Here, the word suddenly is very important because if you look or if you take nation state in a perspective of 2000, 3000, 5000 timeline, years of timeline, switching to a new technology or a new circular technology in a couple of years is sudden moment, right? That has a legacy impact because it was the party which wanted to bring in technology to the center. And second thing, also important is when globally, when the cost of the green technologies were competed, China had absolutely a positive atmosphere and ecosystem to work upon it. So now you have a narrative and you have a technology at your disposal, and then you come up with a fantastic plan. When I talk about green technology here, I'm essentially talking about EVs, electric vehicles, because the Chinese car brands made up about half of the global EV green vehicles. The second component is lithium-ion batteries. China holds over 70% of global manufacturing, and the third one is about the solar photovoltaics, the PVs. So when I say that, what I essentially mean is that China slowly transitioned from a crisis management to a management of its global relation, keeping green development at the center. And what is most important over here is China has slowly transitioned into a strategic industrial policy. And this, when I say strategic industrial policy, that means that they prepared for a long-term policy gains, long-term policy aims. Few of the terms you might have heard about or you might have read in the literature. For example, circular economy. For example, ecological civilization. For example, beautiful China, Mei Guo. All these narratives were created to basket the technological shift globally it was happening, and China could also align with that, but also benefit domestically. So that alignment happened as a part of China's larger industrial strategies, which is absolutely, shocking to see. America and most of the European countries, which were actually doing this upstream job and then developing technology and downstreaming it, distributing it, did not even anticipate that China would climb up so fast and so at such a pace. Okay. Now, when we talk about strategic policies, what was at the core of strategic policies was instituting broad policies. Remember one thing, it did not happen overnight. When China started talking about green technological development, it essentially said that it has to meet two ends. One, it has to develop the domestic industries, innovate, as well as traditional and often dirty but critical upstream industries need to be rectified. China did not really move away from the manufacturing, the traditional manufacturing. What China did smartly, while it was developing the green technologies, it moved the older technologies, older industrial bases to the inside, to the westwards. Then, second thing, China made sure that it turns into accelerator state. This is most of us who know the industry well, whether that's Manjunath or Divai and maybe Venkat also, the job of accelerator is to enable the capacities of the existing enterprises. So what China was trying to do is actually was not doing inventions, but was actually capitalizing on the innovation which it had and turn it into make China in the accelerator state. It was the bestest way to make the existing system without making any major disruptions, create it as a motherboard and then plug it in and then run it. Most of us are rather infatuated with the idea that how China became so fast a country, which could come at the center stage when it comes to the green technologies. This was the module which was developed by the Chinese. There is a argument which says that China knows how to make from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, right? That's just an additions. But the problem with China is it doesn't know how to make from 0 to 1. This is a major problem. And as a result of it, if you see the trajectory, if you remember my first words, a narrative trajectory, China built from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. And China is doing it brilliantly. Let's not shy away from that, right? But we cannot definitely have a common currency. Right. What comes to the next is the overcapacity. Remember one thing, when China started developing the green technologies and then the green development, it had to cater the major problem what China has been proud about, like huge warehouses, dry ports. And then China was stuck with these overcapacity problems. So essentially, when China was developing these narratives, trying to institutionalize brought policies, it had to deal with the consolidation of the overcapacities, which came as very natural thing for it. Then, once China started trimming down the overcapacities, what came next was the supply chain security. I'm a researcher, but I'm speaking like a management student here. But that's the interdisciplinary nature of studies. What China forces us to do. Interestingly, there are three aspects of supply chain security. China's industrial approach has been in past 15 years is to control the domestic input materials. They want to control the production of the critical minerals and the processing of it. And secondly, make it attractive for the investors, for the domestic economy, so it builds upon that. The second phase of that, based on that, dominate the supplies internationally. So once you have controlled the productions, you can control the supplies. Once you control the supplies, you control the market and the metabolism of the market. Simple three-line formula. And what happens, the best case I can give you? Today, yeah, I'll try to wind it up. So today, I give an example. China controls 70% of lithium cell manufacturing, the first line, okay, controlling the production. And China also is one country which controls 13% of global supplies of the lithium cell. China dominates it, right? And let's take the polysilicon. Manjuna spoke about the semiconductor industry, right? It's a key industry as well in solar panels. China controls 80% of the production. So you have the entire system, China developed it, making everyone look green, but it was not green, it was red rather, right? 1.5 minutes, I'm concluding that. Now, interestingly, while these things were being restructured domestically, when China's leadership was trying to do it, was trying to realign the domestic forces, domestic production lines, trimming down, what it was essentially doing that, it was trying to build bilateral alliances. China doesn't believe in multilateral alliances. Those are all bilateral alliances. Belt and Road you have. I will not go and speak about it. I think you have done more studies on BRI than myself, okay? So the China worked upon building bilateral alliances, and this bilateral alliances is only one to keep the other countries outside the competition. That's very important. Today, what worries China the most is it has approximately 600 billion of technological exports to EU. And today China is already thinking about what happens if we are displaced out of EU. So we have to talk about it, right? Last 1 minute. Now, what China is doing now, essentially, three things: promote, protect, and partner up. So China is silently promoting its security-oriented strategy in great development, protecting its local industries, and also partnering with the international big players. I have examples to give from that. 1 minute or shorter than that, let me come up to quick things. By 2023, China held approximately about 180 billion Chinese yuan of green bonds, okay? And it issued those green bonds. When it is green standard is concerned, I often speak about those who are working in technology. China is not creating the most smartest technologies, but China is creating alternative technologies, the standards of technologies, the lingo of technologies. China is looking beyond that. Huawei is already building 7G. It is already selling this 6G to some of the markets. If you listen to Ran Zhengfei, the way he talks, he said, we are already into 7, we are already testing the 7G. Green technologies. Chinese patent filing in green energy research has increased from 42,000 in just the period of 10 years, 2005 to 2015. So I'll not go beyond that. I just want to conclude saying few things. One, there was a famous statement which was made by Jessica Chen Weiss at the Cornell University when she said, we cannot dominate China by putting out China, right? So don't try to out China China. So essential idea for us is, I think yesterday we were talking about, there are few areas we have to be carefully looking at China, what China faltered in, where China made mistakes. We need to learn from there. One. Second thing, if you look at, because international politics is not something like a big science. It's a simple as 1 plus was 2, and sometimes 1 plus 1 is 11, but it is predictable. What I mean here is that the way China is trying to manage its economic relationship with the US by de-risking but not decoupling, India can also do the same thing, not overnight of decoupling but de-risking. Essentially, it is very important to understand that China is going to remain a major challenge, even if it is a green development or green technologies are concerned. And we have to improve our abilities to deal China challenges in different fashions. So it is not green developed essentially, it is a red development. It has a lot of strategies behind it. We have to understand as a researcher, student, professional, and in any other fashion. Thank you so much.